Why the Gold and Silver Clause of Article 1, Section 10 does not apply to the federal government. Written by Rick DeMarie on December 27, 2011. Quote, "No state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts." Unquote. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. This clause has caused so much confusion about federal coining and monetary duties in libertarian circles that I'd like to address it here. But, before directly addressing why the clause is not relevant today, we need to consider the possibility that the framers underestimated what it would take to end slavery, because if all had gone according to plan, there would have been no need for a full federal takeover of the currency during and after the Civil War. So consider these 2 points. First, it was constitutionally mandated that slavery was supposed to begin a phase-out in 1808 under Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, which states, quote, "The migration and importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation, not exceeding $10 for each person." Unquote. In other words, after 1808, all bets were off and the federal government could tax slave importation out of existence, which was the secret plan of key original framers. Second, the temporary, federally chartered, privately owned central bank, the first bank of the United States, was supposed to dissolve in 1811, with no plans for another federal central bank, and with all note issue power reverting back to state-incorporated free banks. However, what actually happened is that the slave importation increased after 1787, to take advantage of the 1808 deadline for the tax cap of $10 per slave, and thereafter, slave trading gained such great momentum that it was impossible to stop without a civil war and a full federal takeover of the currency. But, assuming 1808 was in fact the beginning of the end of slavery, we would have been left with, number 1, exclusive federal control of base money coinage under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. Number 2, state governmental entities being absolutely prohibited from coining their own money or issuing their own paper money, bills of credit, under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. Number 3, state government entities allowed to issue charters to privately owned state-free banks, which could issue their own notes, but would only use federal coin as base money. Number 4, state chartered banks issuing their own notes as legal tender in common trade, but with state government entities being barred from collecting taxes or enforcing court judgments in, quote, anything but gold and silver coin, unquote, to give federal power over any private or foreign monetary influence that tried to inordinately control a state government with paper money. This scenario is probably what free banking advocate George Selgin envisions, except that he would also allow the state-chartered banking corporations the power to issue their own base money coinage, in addition to allowing them to print their own paper notes. My view is that this is unacceptable under our constitutional scheme of things, because state-chartered private banking corporations were always supposed to use, exclusively, federal coin as base money for their notes. So from my analysis above, it should be fairly clear that the only way the gold and silver clause of Article 1, Section 10 would become relevant again would be if Congress allowed state-chartered banks to issue their own notes, and if Congress believed that states could be relied upon to fairly and constitutionally govern the employer-slash-employee relationship, formerly the slaveholder-slash-slave relationship. Since I personally don't believe individual states can be trusted to fairly or adequately govern employers, the only hope I see for free banking is federally chartered free banks with power to issue their own paper and electronic notes, but with no power to issue their own base money coinage. I also don't believe that privately owned banking corporations should be allowed to engage in fractional reserve practices unless the government is limiting their liability, and government lawyers vigorously enforce bankruptcy laws against the actual owner and operators of failed banks. In conclusion, the above analysis means that the gold and silver clause will likely forever remain irrelevant and probably should be repealed to prevent continued conflict and misunderstanding. Of course, a proposal to get rid of the gold and silver clause would cause the populace great concern, and therefore should be thoroughly explained. But this would mean thoroughly explaining United States monetary history, which would probably raise sensitive issues about regulatory income taxes on the use of non-coin money, something the government is probably not eager to expose.